Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Thanks for joining me today. On this Tuesday, April the 15th, it is tax day, which is maybe one of my least favorite days. Yeah, it might actually be my least favorite day. I really did not like... yesterday, I wrote the check, filled out the amount. I found out that because I don't pay the government their money in increments, they wanted an additional couple bucks. It's all crap. Man, I hate paying for something that I know is tyrannical and has been basically used to come after me and my friends and you and people that are decent and just want to be left the freak alone. And then with the advent of Doge, we've just been seeing that all the money that we're writing out there by the thousands and the tens of thousands are just being handed out to complete randos by the billions to Harvard or other places. It's absolutely crazy what it's become, like what our government has become. And I cannot fathom that the people who founded this country would tolerate it at this point. They would be looking at us going like, yo, when are you going to start shooting the redcoats? I don't get it. I mean, I really don't. I don't think that's the answer right now. We've slowly allowed this tyrannical finger of government like right in our home, just squishing us down. So that bothers me. And nothing made it more obvious to me than reading our leftist newspapers, our leftist journalists, propaganda mills, pushing forward the agenda of the day, which is that we're getting rid of people who came to our country illegally. They came here and they've been paying taxes in good faith, just like you, and they've been absorbing public benefits, just like you probably don't because you pay for your own health insurance, and they have been getting free emergency room care and surgeries and going to be a net burden on the public, and we're thinking about getting rid of them. Yeah. I'm not kidding you. Like the lead story from CNN was that there's a woman who's a big fat Mexican lady. And like, I'm not trying to be mean. That's just like what she is. She's a big, fat Mexican lady who couldn't even walk. She was in a wheelchair. And she's young. And she's got kids. Thank God she brought her kids here too. And she came here and we're paying for it. And she might get deported. But she's been paying taxes. I don't know how you can pay taxes if you're not from this country. I don't know how you get to do that. We've actually created a mechanism by which the federal government can collect taxes from people who are not legally allowed to work or pay taxes in this country. That's how batshit crazy we are right now. There's no way around it. So we're going to talk a little bit about Title VIII. We're going to talk about the fact that this media, which is out there running cover for all these wildly inappropriate residents of our nation that came here illegally, are getting schooled by people like Stephen Miller, who is like basically asking them really simple questions. I really like the new version of some of the Trump administration where when they're asked a question, they clarify whether or not the journalist, the quote unquote journalist, knows what the question even means, and finding out that they don't even know what they're saying. They're just mouthing platitudes, probably because they went to those universities that we've been funding. So that's where we're going to go today. And then also the nausea of bimbos in space. Somebody called it Star Wars the other day. I just watched like all the kind of the reports. We've got some of the Katy Perry trip to the atmosphere. So we'll show you that if you're looking for some cringe. And also some of the worst people in America, people who write for the Washington Post. Got a little Taylor Loren clip that I can't get out of my head because once I watched it, I realized that she might not just be campaigning for an audience. She might actually be one of the worst human beings. And even though she doesn't even have kids, confident she would destroy her kid's life simply to impress her friends at brunch, as my buddy Steve Friend likes to point out. So that's the plan today. Let's get into a little read from one of our sponsors. If you guys are concerned about your digital safety, and that's a good thing to do, you might want to check into our friends over at Patriot Protect. And you can get there by going to patriot-protect.com/Kyle. I talked to one of the founders, the co-founder, Skip, the other day. We'll have it's kind of like an infomercial, but I got a good chance of kind of sizing him up as a person. Neat guy, really fun conversation. It points the picture out on why you guys might need this stuff. All right. And if you don't have this service, find something. It's not going away. Data breaches are a major issue. It doesn't matter whether it's in public or private. We've actually got a story about potentially Doge allowing access for the Russians to come into the National Labor Relations Board today. This is a ubiquitous problem. It doesn't matter if your information is digitized, then it's accessible on an internet, on a web at this point, because networks can all be cracked. Full names, social security numbers, home addresses, phone numbers, drug test results, you name it, private information that can be used to gain your confidence and then scam you out of your money, out of your bank accounts, out of setting up loans, using your credit score. Illegal aliens can do this kind of stuff. They can buy these things on the dark web and use it to destroy everything that you have built in your financial security. It's a pretty inexpensive little service when it comes right down to it, if you figure out what the cost is. All you're doing is making yourself a harder target at patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Again, patriot-protect.com/Kyle. You can use the search and destroy protocol that they have to remove your personal information from hundreds of data broker websites where they'll try to scam you and steal your stuff. And this is an ongoing problem. They also search the dark web and find out what your exposure level looks like. And it kind of lets you know whether or not you should be updating passwords and things like that, moving things around, closing accounts that might be compromised, and so on. Check them out. If you don't have this service, have a service. The link is in the show description. Again, it's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Let's do this. All right, folks. So here we are. We're going to talk a little bit about maybe illegal aliens, because I don't know any other way to do it. We'll start off with that. There was a meeting in the White House. There was also a shocker, a story that a federal judge decided to rule against the Trump administration and allow for like 500,000 illegal aliens that are now going to be illegal, but they cannot be called illegal because they're here on a thing called parole. Parole means that the Biden administration unilaterally decided to allow them in from 4 specific countries, the countries of Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. That's what I was thinking. When I was thinking, hey, how can we make America a greater country? What would make it the best place for me and my family and the people that I pay taxes to try to get a good service out of? How can we make it best? And then I thought, what if we just let a bunch of people from Cuba and Haiti and Nicaragua and Venezuela come here? Would that be good? Don't let them wait in line. Don't make them go through the process. Just like bring them in here and then dump them in and then give them access to work visas right away. And then make sure that they cannot be deported with any kind of reasonable notice. You guys are talking in the chat about the word parole. It's a real specific word that's used in the federal service. In fact, all of the Afghans that came here, many of them that came during that sort of disastrous pullout in 2021 in August, when they were, falling off the planes, when they were taking these massive Air Force transport jets and jumping off out of, they weren't in Bagram, were they? They were in the airport in Kabul. When they were flying here, they let them into this country, not under a position called refugee status. That's not what they got. They got called parolees. They were paroled by the State Department, which means you have a temporary access to be here until your country no longer sucks. Or until we get sick of you, in theory. Well, a federal judge says that's no bueno. You can't be doing that. Trump administration cannot immediately revoke deportations. By the way, they gave them 30 days notice. They cannot revoke the deportation protections and work permits of hundreds of thousands of migrants. Oh, they're migrants. What does the word migrant mean, people? Can anybody tell me why we keep seeing the leftist talking faces use the word migrant? This person who wrote this article over at CBS is a guy named Camilo Montoya Galvez. And Camilo is an immigration reporter. It's an entire beat for CBS to cover, and they use the word migrant. Now, maybe I'm crazy, and I've said it here before, but man, doesn't migrant mean that you come somewhere for a little while, you spend some time there, maybe a season, maybe you're here to work for like the growing season, the so-called picking our crops situation that the racist Democrats like to call out? Who's going to pick the crops? It's going to be the migrants. We have a guest worker program. We have a migrant worker program. I have a family member who runs a business that relies on migrant labor. They come in during the work season, they do work, they stay here, they go back to the place from whence they came with the money that they earned. This is something that has happened for a very long time in Western civilization. People commute to the work and then they return to their home. Maybe they sit out the next season because they made enough money, because their country is so crap that they don't need to make that much money, and their standard of living is so low that it doesn't make a difference whether they work every season or every other season. And yeah, they don't have to stay here. And then you have migrant, the way that they use these words, which means future citizens from illegal origins. That's what the leftists use it for. Future citizens. Why don't they just call it that? Migrants. Hundreds of thousands of migrants from Cuba, from Haiti, from Nicaragua, Venezuela, all places that I hope the United States looks more like in 1 or 2 or 4 years, right? Isn't that what we all aspire to have, a Cuban economy? Wouldn't you like to just see a bunch of 50s, Chevys and Fords running around because we can no longer get new vehicles? Oh, wait, that's because they sucked as a country, that people are basically, how many people are trying to escape into the nation of Cuba? None? What about Haiti? Are any of you trying to go to Haiti? Are you trying to migrate to Haiti permanently? Become Haitians? Nicaragua? No? Nobody wants to move to Venezuela and not come back? This is full crazy. Now, the judge, whose name is Indira Tawani, I thought, oh, surely this is a non-U.S. born person, and that's why they have such crazy sympathies towards the leftists that we're trying to promote in this country. No. Indira Tawani is a Biden administration district judge who's from New Jersey, who grew up here. She's in her 60s. She's pretty unfortunate looking as well, for whatever that's worth. Yep. She just said that these people, they cannot be threatened with self-deportation. They cannot be facing arrest or deportation by federal immigration authorities. She has suspended the deportation warnings that the government sent out. It said that the executive can no longer conduct business the way they want, and prohibited all the officials from revoking legal protections known as immigration parole. There's over 500,000 of these people. These mass parole terminations cannot happen until every single individual case is reviewed according to her decision. She's one lady in one district court. Again, it has to have case-by-case justification for the termination of legal status, which was granted as a blanket. In other words, you can roll it out as a blanket, but you can't take it back off as a blanket. I don't get it. I do not get it. I do not understand how we're doing that. Meanwhile, they're also agitating for this guy who got deported, the quote-unquote Maryland man. Have you guys been paying attention to this? Maryland man deported to El Salvador, even though he's an El Salvadorian citizen. He's a citizen of El Salvador. He has been alleged to have been an MS-13 gang member, and he was sent off to a prison in El Salvador. The El Salvadorian president, his name is Bukele. He was sitting in the White House. He was asked about this, and they were like, listen, a judge said that he needs to come back to the United States. Are you going to listen to a district court judge, president of another sovereign nation that has a deal with the United States to take back the citizens of that country? Are you going to do that? Because we want you to. And he just makes fun of them. It's actually fairly amusing. Here are some discussions of the so-called philosopher king who runs, which, by the way, is an homage to the Greeks, that you have this sort of tyrannical but benevolent tyrant kind of thing. Here he is talking in the White House, sitting with Trump and going like, you want me to bring back someone that the United States president has declared a terrorist? That seems like a weird move.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to have suggested that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right? How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you could release him inside El Salvador?
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
They'd love to have a criminal, released into
our country. There's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people.
He goes, don't worry about it. It's only CNN asking you that question. Of course, the story I have that's on the screen right now is from CNN. At the White House, Bukele have made it clear that they are not going to have this guy, quote unquote, Maryland man, Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia. He cannot come back. He says he's not going to bring a terrorist back into the United States. That's pretty funny. Even though the Supreme Court has said that the United States must facilitate his return, it turns out he's no longer in U.S. control. So while the White House could lean on them, sounds like they're not going to do it. Sounds like this Maryland man is going to have to become the thing. Do you think they call him that in the prison, by the way? In the Supermax prison in El Salvador? They go, hey, Maryland man, tell us more. Because I don't think that would be a good name to have in a Latin American Supermax prison. That's just my take on it. I don't know. It becomes very obvious that these people have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, and it becomes more obvious when you listen to people like Stephen Miller. I've been listening to some of his clips going back all the way into the early or to the late 90s, rather, and he's always been on this. He's just been a guy that has a sharp wit, and he's a combatant. He doesn't mind engaging and mixing it up with people. Some people don't want to be challenged on their ideas. Some people really relish that idea. Like, come at me. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to find this more fun than you will. And so he's standing out in this little space where they have these press gaggles out on what looks like a kind of a loop around out in front of the White House. And he gets into this like back and forth with these journalists. And the funniest thing, and I want you to tune your ear for this before you listen to this little clip. The funniest thing that you will hear is one of the reporters answers back, "We don't know what we're talking about. We're not part of the government." That might be the clip of the year, explaining the media's inability to even know the background on their question. Who's putting these questions in their head then? Whenever I ask a question, I at least know what the possible answers look like because I understand the nature of the things that I'm requesting. I'm like, hey, I would like some information. Can you tell me a little bit more about where you're from? If somebody starts talking and I don't understand the nature of what that even means, how crazy would that be? If they were like, well, I was sprouted, I'd be like, sprouted? I thought you were a person. Oh, I don't understand the nature of this conversation anymore. I'm not part of the government, so I don't understand the basics of the thing that I'm asking you to clarify as a gotcha. This is why they're so inept. And it is fun to listen. Again, tune in. We're from the government. We're not from the government. We're not part of it. We're just reporters.
Gentlemen, the return, guys, do you know the difference between a deportation order and a withholding order? Do you know the difference? Any of you, please. Do you?
Well, we're not in the government.
But you couldn't even spend 72 hours over the weekend learning the distinction, even though you've been writing and talking about it this whole time.
Stephen, we're not going anywhere. On the gold cards.
Just raise your hand. Does any of you know the difference between a deportation order and a withholding order?
My question is, how do you know that he's a member of MSRP? The White House has repeatedly said, according to intelligence.
According to our government and his government. In other words, his government has confirmed based on their own intelligence that he's a member of MS-13. First of all, do you dispute that he's an illegal alien?
What's that?
Do you dispute that he's an illegal alien?
No.
Okay. And do you dispute that as an illegal alien, we have the right to deport him?
He
went through the legal process. So I want to be very... what I'm getting from this conversation, which is educational for me, is that not one person in the media knows the difference between a deportation order and a withholding order. Is that a fair statement? You're learning about this all for the first time right now? I guess so. Okay. So the deportation order means the judge has said he must be deported from the country. He has no right to remain here any longer. He must be removed from the country. So his only options are to be deported to his home country or another country. That's it. There's no other option. He doesn't get to stay here. He doesn't get to live here. He has no future here. He has no right to be here. He's an illegal alien. So when you keep saying return, because you've been spun up by the open borders advocates, you all seem to be operating under the illusion that he would be able to come to the United States and just continue to live here illegally. That's not an option available to him. His only choices in life are to live in El Salvador or to live in another country. That's it. There's no other option, legally or otherwise, because he came to our country illegally. Do you understand that?
Stephen, can I ask, as a matter of policy, does the administration believe that immigration judges, because they're under DOJ, that their orders can be overruled by what the administration wants? Is that a general matter of policy?
Well, actually, so specifically, the Attorney General has authority to overrule the immigration courts, and that's actually by statute, yes.
It's just like, it's like question and answer time. It starts off as, can we catch you in a lie? And then it ends up him just sort of teaching a bunch of teenagers that have these fully formed ideas that come from absolutely nothing. As he said, they didn't even take the weekend to go educate themselves on the relevant statute. It's not really hard. You could go out and read Title 8 if you really wanted to. It's not like great reading, but I pulled some up today because I was really curious. It's like, okay, I have a question. I want to know, how is it that somebody is able to pay taxes in the United States? What do they have to do? Are they always going to steal a Social Security number? It turns out we've actually facilitated 5.8 million identification numbers for people who are legally not allowed to work in this country. It is illegal for them to hold a job. It is an illegal act to employ them. It's a misdemeanor, punishable by $3,000 for every single instance of illegal employment and punishable by up to 6 months in prison. Federal statute if you violate it. And then we just were like, oh, but also we want to take their money because they're obviously going to keep working because we're obviously going to allow this kind of nonsense. The concept of suicidal empathy is like, well, they're already here. Like, we have to let them eat. No, you snuck into my nation. That's the equivalent of saying that someone broke into your home. And now that they're here and they've been sleeping on your couch, your only option is to kick them out or to feed them. You have to feed them. How about you're going to be facing the muzzle of a 300 blackout? And I'm going to be ordering you at gunpoint to get the hell out of my country. Get the hell out of my house. Get off my couch. That's my kid's couch. That's not yours. It's crazy. And that's why you have this soft-willed, goofy, absolutely goofy, soft-headed people out there crying about this problem that they made up. That's why I got this profile. I got spun up because of this. It's tax day, and this is the story. A day in the life of a migrant seeking to stay in the United States. Today is an NPR type day, and this is an NPR type story. It certainly blows my mind that this is what, oh yeah, we pay for NPR as a nation. So as I write that check out to the government, and I'm paying more money than I feel very comfortable about. You know what's weird? Okay, I'll just, let me editorialize for 1 second for you too. When you work a W-2 job, which I've done my entire life, and the government pulls its cut before you get it, it's actually not nearly as bad. It really isn't. It's crappy. You look up there and you're like, oh, here's my wages. It's $5,000, and the government held on to $1,231, and then they pulled some other money for Social Security, and then they pulled some other money for state taxes, and you're like, oh, whatever. Like, I still get to keep my $2,960. I'm like, oh, cool. I earned $2,960. My pay, my real pay, is $2,960. It's not $5,000. It's $2,960. So that's what I get to take home. Remember? What's your take-home pay? People would be like, what do you make after taxes? What are you pulling down after taxes? Okay, fine. Incrementally, they take it from you. When you cut a check at the end of the year, which is I've done basically twice now, and both times I was like, oh no. My buddy and I were talking. He's an attorney. He works for himself. He said, this year, I bought the government a really nice car. And as someone who worked for the government, who would lease and or buy really nice cars, we had like an Audi A4. I'm not even kidding you guys. We had a Mercedes in our surveillance fleet because there were needs for it in certain places. We bought that. And it's even more disgusting. And what's even crazier is the government would still, like, working for the government, they still tax you in the same way. So all of that stuff hits a little differently now than it did then. It cuts me at a different level to see that I am not just seeing it incrementally go away. I am legitimately the one who is financing something for a wasteful, stupid, and generally useless organization like the one I used to work for, doing awful things, like telling you that they're going to do a bunch of stuff and that cutesy time is over, and instead they're going to like arrest one guy from a Tesla dealership. Actually, let's do that real quick first, because otherwise I'll forget to do it. Here, we'll just cover this little piece of local news that is national news, because our DOJ is promoting that they can't do things quick enough. They cannot go after people who went after Donald Trump in the Russiagate scandal. They cannot stop the people who were involved in January 6th. They must promote them instead. But meanwhile, in a series of like a short number of days, a man in New Mexico has been arrested and charged for arson attacks on a Tesla dealership, which I'm sure has nothing to do with the fact that Elon Musk, the owner of Tesla, the one who runs this company, is buddies with the president. I'm sure it has nothing to do with that. This is like low level, like it is a crime. And I do think it's actually terroristic to do this because of the goal that they were having. It fits the statute. This is not national news, though. This is some a-hole burned a couple of cars. Far worse than that happened in 2020 to government buildings, to all of our property that all of us pay for, millions and millions of dollars. Actually, worse things happened on January 6th to our federal buildings, which I'm not crazy about. I don't like it that we're wasting our money having to fix windows and stuff that idiots broke out. That's all bad. But the national news that NBC is covering here that this man has been carrying out, by the way, it's also telling, just in the way that they use the word immigrant, again, or migrant now is the term, you can read this stuff and you know exactly what the writer thinks. This is Patrick Smith. I have no idea who Patrick Smith is. Paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph. Tesla, this is a direct quote, Tesla has become the target of peaceful protests and violent attacks after its owner, Elon Musk, became a key figure in Donald Trump's efforts to dismantle and shrink federal agencies, end quote. That right there makes it terrorism because he became a key figure in politics and they are attempting to sway the opinion of the federal government. Tesla was the target of peaceful protests. They're peaceful, guys. That's the first thing that was happening. First, it was peaceful protests. Literally, while there is a picture, and I mean that literally, the opening picture that you're seeing on the screen and is in the article is a vehicle that was burned in a Tesla showroom because the guy used a firebomb. And that's not political. And that is not, that's not a protest. It's not peaceful either. That's violence. It's violence against property. And eventually that stuff elevates into violence against people. All right, so we're going to do a day in the life of the immigrant. I promise you that is the next step. Let's do, before we get there, this is a great reminder that things can go sideways locally for you. Somebody could burn your business to the ground. Somebody could come after your family. Things can get stupid. And if they do, you want to make sure that you have an insurance policy. You want your own ability to feed your family. Maybe hold on to it for 90 days. You've heard me talk about My Patriot Supply because that's the one that we trust with our family's well-being. When we moved, I had to move all my 12 buckets or whatever the heck it is of the 90-day food kits that we have. We got 2 of those. Right now, you can get the same food kit, but it's going to be upgraded. The Mega 3-month emergency food kit is going to be the same as the standard kit. So for whatever I paid, you guys are going to get $360 more in real beef, real chicken, farm fresh fruits, and vegetables, no additional charge. They're upgrading it from a 2,000 calorie a day diet to a 2,500 calorie a day diet. And that means you're going to get more than any other food supply. Plus, it's going to give you the strength to not just survive, but also strike the fight, the energy you might need to actually do real tasks. This is a good deal. Most of you probably eat more than 2,000 calories a day right now. That's just the American diet. This kit's going to be there when you need it. It stays fresh for up to 25 years. You can find it at preparelikekyle.com. Again, if you've been waiting for an opportunity to go in there and dive into the thing, this is a fire and forget one-time situation. You fire, you forget, you get it. You can also use it as training and you can actually recoup some of the stuff on there. Check them out today at preparelikekyle.com. Again, you got 2 options in life, prepare or repair. That's why you have insurance on your vehicle when somebody burns at a Tesla dealership. I'm sure they have insurance. This is why you have insurance on your home. This is an insurance for your person that you can keep eating. Again, preparelikekyle.com. I guess we'll get into this kind of gross thing right now because I don't know what else to do. We're going to talk about a day in the life of one migrant who seeks to stay in the United States, even though there's not really a good reason why she should be here. I don't know what she's doing here. And of course, NPR is going to cover it breathlessly. Now, the pictures you're seeing on the screen is a heavy-set Hispanic female, very young-looking. She's sitting in a wheelchair with flowers. It's nice. Do you know flowers are one of those things you buy when you have enough money to buy flowers? You know who doesn't get flowers? People that don't have any money. You can't buy flowers, can you? What about sitting there in a hospital gown? That means that she had to pay for that. Just kidding. She works at Walmart. I'm just reading the article here and going wait a minute, how is that possible? How can she be here and hospitalized? She works an hourly job at Walmart and she can afford to do that and she's not absolutely destitute. Because the United States, with our suicidal empathy, we actually already have universal health care. Some of you may not realize this. Whenever you hear Democrats cry about this, because that's going to be coming up in a second as well, Joe Biden's going to step back into the mix. I'm not kidding. There is a universal health care system in the United States. And as someone who has worked in it, as an emergency medic in the street, you cannot be denied emergency medical treatment. And as someone who shows up at an emergency room, you will not be denied emergency medical services. That is new in my lifetime. In my lifetime, they required, sometime in the early 90s, I think it was 93. I used to know this stuff, but now it's kind of skipped out of my brain. They require that you cannot be turned away for your failure to pay. And in some ways, that's good. That's good for Americans. What does it mean if you're not an American? What does it mean if you're not here legally? This hospitalization that she dealt with, her name is Yasmelin Velasquez. She was hospitalized for several days. All of you who've ever had a hospital bill for a couple of days, you now know what I'm talking about. She said, I can't stay in the hospital. I have immigration court tomorrow, and the hospitalization came at a bad time. She missed her first court hearing. The next day would almost certainly guarantee a deportation order for a 36-year-old Venezuelan immigrant, aka illegal. That's why she has a court hearing, with her 2 young sons. She's on edge because the United States Department of Homeland Security sent her a 2-day notice saying her temporary status was terminated. She's no longer allowed to be in this country. It's time for you to leave the United States, the email read. Do not attempt to remain in the United States. The federal government will find you. Our U.S. government reached out and said, it is time for you to leave. You have a 30-day window, self-deport. And she said, but I'm going to go to court and I'm going to have a hospitalization on your dollar. It's staggering to me. She's among the growing number of migrants, here's that word again, who received the DHS email. All of them came through legal pathways and now terminated by President Trump. That it was a legal pathway that was created out of whole cloth by the former president. They were given TPO, temporary protective orders from deportation because they surrendered to immigration authorities at the U.S.-Mexico border. That's not how it works when you come to this country. NPR has been following her since Ciudad Juarez, which is not a nice place. That's in my old area. I used to work across the border with there. One of the most violent places most of you can imagine. If you've ever listened to any of our interviews, by all means, go back and listen. We talked about Ciudad Juarez. I'll have to remember which one we did it in. But yeah, this is rough. She spent 8 months sitting in Mexico. She's from Venezuela. She made it to Mexico, and she was able to survive there for 8 months. Sounds like you found a new home, honey. Why are you in my nation? I don't get it. Now they're left in limbo. Should they stay here? Should they fight in the legal system? Who's going to pay for those legal processes? We are, by the way. There's more orders. The Trump administration is trying to cut off the legal aid that feeds into paying for these people to have process. They get to come into our country illegally. They violate the national sovereignty. And then we pay for someone to argue that they should stay even though they broke the law. My mind is just, every time I deal with this stuff, it's insane. She's one of 900,000 people that use the CBP One app, an app that basically was deliberately created to subvert the American immigration process. 1 million people that they can keep track of. She told NPR that she was getting very nervous, that migrants had been picked up by immigration authorities at the court. Thank God. Yeah, that should happen. This is where it got crazy for me. Her doctor called her during her shift at Walmart. How does she have a shift at Walmart? The doctor said she had some bad test results. She might need to stay in the emergency room for a couple of days. The single most expensive way that we do healthcare is in the emergency room. Everything is 2 to 5 times more expensive. It's kind of like owning something on a boat. You know, if you've ever had a boat, you know what I'm talking about. The acronym BOAT, break out another 1,000. It's like, oh, I need a rope. And you're like, oh, well, rope's like $3. You can just go down to Walmart and pick yourself one up. You can buy one from this lady Velasquez. And you're like, no, I need a boat for I need a rope for my boat. And they're like, oh, a nautical rope. Well, that is $28, my friend, for the same thing, but it says nautical on it. Boat stuff is expensive. Try to go buy screws for a boat, like a 4-pack of stainless steel screws for your boat, and try to find them in a regular hardware store. It'll be $3 in the hardware store, and it'll be like $16.99 if you go buy it at one of the marine companies. I promise you, that's just the way it works. That's why I don't have a boat. It's full crazy. So she's working at Walmart. She's going to get emergency room medical services. And she asked the court to accommodate her. And then they have all these pictures of her sitting there with her boys. And they're very sweet looking kids. I'm sure they're super nice kids. You have no right to be here. You spent 8 months in Mexico recently. Sounds like you can handle it. It sounds like you could be fine. Here's what I couldn't figure out. How does she have a job at Walmart? I went to the DOJ's archives. If you guys ever want to do this, you can actually go through the criminal resource manual, and they will break it out by statute, the various different criminal violations. And Title 8 of the United States Code, there's a piece called Section 1324. There's a bunch of little subsections on here, but it's housed in Chapter 1908 of the unlawful employment of aliens and the criminal penalties that exist. 18 U.S.C. 1324 makes it unlawful for any person, I'm reading directly from the statute, or other entity to hire, recruit, refer for a fee, employment in the United States of an alien, knowing the alien is an unauthorized alien as defined by Section 1324AH3. In subsection 1324AH2, it makes it unlawful for a person or entity, after hiring an alien for employment, to continue to employ the alien in the United States, knowing the alien has become an unauthorized alien with respect to such employment. It also provides that that person may not engage, if that person engages in a pattern or practice of violations under subsection A1A, they shall be fined not more than $3,000 for each unauthorized alien with respect to whom the violation occurs, $3,000 per instance of hiring an illegal, and imprisonment for not more than 6 months for the entire pattern or practice, or both. They can be fined $3,000 per illegal and imprisoned. And yet, this woman has a job there. That's what she does. And so you're thinking, well, who's defending this stuff? What American is standing in the way of illegal aliens being deported and not being allowed to work? Well, you'll be shocked to learn that there is actually a bipartisan consensus between a pair of senators who are now rebuking the White House. This is another NPR story. And they're moving to stop the removal of legal aid for unauthorized, unaccompanied minors. In other words, illegal alien children that have no ability to support themselves in the United States. We need to pay for their legal defense to make them stay here for longer, which sounds like, a recipe for human trafficking, which is kind of what we called out previously. Now, you're going to be shocked to find out who the Republican on this list, on this letter is. 2 senators are mounting a rare bipartisan attack against Donald Trump's administration, trying to argue on behalf of due process for migrants. Again, the word migrants, totally different author each time. They've all got the same talking point. You guys in the chat want to guess who this person is that wrote the bipartisan letter, the Republican side of this thing? I'll give you a couple seconds to figure it out. Yep. And right at the bottom there, our friend King Squeak, who's regularly in our chat, says, let me guess, Murkowski. That's right. Alaska, allegedly Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski. She joined John Ossoff, a Democrat out of Georgia, like a full communist, in a letter to criticize the end of the federal contract that provides legal representation to 26,000 children who are here in the United States without a parent or a guardian. How can we even seriously consider these people? How serious could you possibly be when you are going to argue that a system should legally retain children without their parents? Lisa Murkowski. Same thing. It could have been Susan Collins, by the way. It could have been a number of Republicans, because all these people are squish and none of them have any principles. And speaking of no principles, and speaking of just some of the craziest things that are going on out there, look at this. Joe Biden is going to reemerge today. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday, April the 15th. And today, Joe Biden apparently is going to reemerge in order to start talking about healthcare. He's going to try to lead the Democrats. This is pretty funny stuff. He's been out of office for 100 days, and he's going to give a post-presidency speech about protecting Social Security. And he wants to step onto the national stage again and try to lead Democrats. Do you know how far out these people must be? How far away from reality are you that Joe Biden is going to have to step in to try to help you? This is really funny. The third paragraph in CNN asked a former supporter of the president, a longtime supporter and donor to the former president, said, "No, I haven't heard from Joe Biden. Thank God." They're gonna bring him back. They're gonna pump him full of amphetamines. Did they let his system detox long enough that they could let that happen? He wants to defend his legacy, because he was just getting attacked by Donald Trump like every couple days because of all the things that were done in this country. Like the 500,000 illegals that got here because of this parole process, or the 900,000 that were brought in by the CBP1 app, or a million other problems that have been going on in the United States. Wild. By the way, they're doing hearings as usual in the Senate. Speaking of things that don't matter that much, we might as well hear a clarification. At least Josh Hawley's saying things like, hey, you can't just say lies here when you're under oath. Let me correct you about Title 8. He specifically wants to go out there and call out this guy. This is a little refresher on Title 8. It's nice to see people are remembering that we have American laws. This feels performative. I'll tell you why. Josh Hawley, if he was really serious, there's a bunch of other things he could be doing too. But, kudos for saying things that are true when you're being taped. He does seem like he's kind of doing his Josh Hawley testimony voice again. But he's not wrong. Here's a little refresher on Title VIII coming from the Senate.
And I've got to correct numerous inaccuracies there. Number one, as you very well know, United States law says that a non-citizen is inadmissible for entry into this country if they, and I quote, endorse or espouse terrorist activity or persuade others to do the same. That same law provides you can be removed for the same reasons. That is what Mr. Khalil has been accused of. He has further been accused of by the United States government lying on his visa application. That on its own would be sufficient to remove him from this country. He is being sued, as you and I sit here in New York court, by the victims of October 7th for terrorizing and assaulting Jewish students, unlawfully taking over and damaging public university property, and physically assaulting Columbia University employees. And you're telling me that it's McCarthyism to remove this individual?
Senator, the deportation was started before that lawsuit, before that second question about what he was saying on his forms.
No, this is what the government has alleged in open court, Mr.
Again, it is an allegation. And by the way, the guy who's responding to him, the guy who's testifying in front of that hearing, he looks exactly like what you think he does. If you're just listening to my voice, I want you to picture bald head, little circle of white hair, a nose, and then a neck. There's basically no chin there. It's this like sort of neck beard kind of creature. He looks like his entire, he basically has the stature of a thumb, of a human thumb, with a nose sticking out. So that's what he is. And he's making apologies. Of course, he's got the little glasses on. And yeah, Mr. Stern. Not exactly a stern voice on that. He's like, well, no, those are the. This is the story, by the way. This is the guy who got deported, supposedly, who's got a green card, and now he's in deportation hearings because they said he came here and he was not supposed to be here in the first place, that he lied on the original visa applications. I've got a little clip from Piers. This is Piers Morgan talking on Bill Maher's show. Bill Maher is getting a lot of credit because he went and sat down with Donald Trump and said he wasn't so bad and that I wish that the guy that I met was the guy that actually is running the country, but he seems like he's doing an act. I got some discrediting of Bill Maher coming in just a minute, so don't worry. We're not going to just fluff up Bill Maher. We don't need to puff piece him because he's been a clown for a long time as well. He's just suddenly realizing that, like, yeah, the government actually does suck and that the people who are running it are not dumb and they're not unserious. They might be playing a little bit of an act, kind of like Josh Hawley, but I don't think Josh Hawley's a bad person for that. I don't think he's a bad guy, even though he does the movie phone votes. As you guys were calling this out in the chat, he does them. It's like, welcome to movie phone. Here's Piers Morgan talking about, let me give you an alternative scenario. Now, he goes out there and says that Jews, I think, are treated improperly in this country. Yeah, probably in some ways. They do actually do. The left is willing to go out there and sacrifice them in a new way, which is kind of funny because a lot of secular Jews tend to be really leftists. Go look at all your voices in Hollywood. But Piers Morgan's making an interesting, let's call it a thought experiment. And the initial knee-jerk reaction is to resist that from the guy who's sitting next to him.
I'm okay with that.
All right, what if I was a young student at Columbia, they're on a green card, British, come in, happy to be here, do all my paperwork, get to Columbia, and I start leading a group which is a bunch of white supremacists, and we start terrorizing black students in the way that they were terrorizing Jewish students. Well, hang on. In that circumstance, would we all be as comfortable with this, or is it the reality which was exposed by the mobs at Columbia, which is that for some reason Jews get treated differently to anybody else when it comes to this kind of thing? Because if that had been, honestly, white supremacists treating black students like that, they would be out the country in 10 minutes. In 10 minutes.
The clapping seals are excited, and it's like, yeah, okay, so we all agree that white supremacy is bad. In fact, the FBI used to tell you it was the #1 threat to the homeland, and that's why you had to get worried about radical Catholics who like Latin Mass and don't follow Vatican II. More on that maybe later. But, okay, fine. So white supremacy is bad. It's also bad to support things like Hamas. The end. Terrorist organization. Whether you like it or not. You don't even have to necessarily agree that. It just turns out that the United States government, under both parties, has agreed that this is a terrorist organization. And if you are supporting them, then you are materially supporting terrorism with your voice. And you can't come in here on a visa. The end. We actually have rules. The alternative is that you could also just make it a little bit more broad. Like, hey, you come here, you had some bad ideas. Maybe your plan to come to the United States was to make a living, not by working at Walmart illegally, which apparently you can go do, but your plan was to rob, rape, and kill women and leave them on the side of the road in Seattle. And that also seems problematic. So all of the people that are here illegally, that have not been vetted properly, get the hell out. I don't know. I listened to this story. This story has been sitting with me for a couple of days. This is from Coma, so it's a local news story. This is not national news. But it seems like it maybe should be. Not because I think it's very common, but because on the fringe, what I will call the radically outside chance that something like this happens in your community. Imagine that this happens near you. And what would the reaction be? Would your wives go out at night? Would they go for a walk with the kids in a stroller if they knew that there were dudes like this running around catching women and drilling holes in their hands to get them to give up passwords and give up their money? Yeah, the story is so outrageous. This is like a torture movie from the early invasion of Iraq, that they were talking about how the evil guys under Saddam Hussein were getting information. I remember watching a movie, I don't know if it was Death Before Dishonor or something like that, where they were like drilling holes in kneecaps. And you're like, that's probably one of the most horrific ways to get tortured. Like someone drilling your body. They did this to this woman. And then they shot her and left her for dead. This is crazy stuff. This is what happens when you import third world values into your country. It's why you don't just carte blanche let millions and millions of people in, because there's going to be some of these guys in that. That's good enough argument for me. We don't need you. Sorry.
2 men came up with a plan to kidnap a woman, steal her car and jewelry, and then kill her, but she survived. This is the Burien apartment complex where police say 2 men kidnapped the woman as she was getting home from work. From here, investigators say the men used a power drill on the woman's hands, threatened her, and eventually drove her here to the mountains near Snoqualmie Pass, where they forced her over a Jersey barrier and then shot her. She told police she played dead and waited for the men to leave before flagging down help. After months of work from the King County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, 2 men, Alexander Arnaez and Kevin Sanabria, are now in custody, charged with kidnapping, robbery, and attempted murder.
While in that vehicle, they used a power drill to drill into her hand to get access to her cell phone as well as bank accounts. There were threats made during this time as well to kill the victim, kill her family, feed her to the bears.
Investigators noted in their report that the victim and witnesses had extreme fear of retaliation, noting one of the men has possible ties to a Venezuelan gang.
You need people to help you.
Retired sheriff's investigator Jim Fuda says fear among victims and witnesses can be frustrating. How does it impact that when you have community members and witnesses who are afraid for their own safety if they speak up?
It makes it difficult to get information, but that's why Crime Stoppers exists, is if people want to report something or get something to the police, they can do it anonymously.
Today, the people who live here told us off camera they know what happened and even heard the screaming when the woman was kidnapped, but they feared being targeted if they spoke up.
This goes right back to what I used to say when I was outside of Casa de Maryland, when we were working on MS-13 cases where there were people being extorted and people were getting killed, and we couldn't figure out who they were because you wouldn't even find the body because the entire community was in terror. Because you imported 900,000 people, and how many of those people are absolutely psychopathic lunatics that are willing to do stuff like this? And they don't go out and get the individual taxpayer identification number, the ITIN, which is a 9-digit number issued by the IRS to enable individuals who do not have a social security number, in other words, they're not legally here, to pay taxes. They can file and pay taxes. Yeah, they can. So they've got 2 choices. They can work illegally. It says an undocumented individual will need a valid social security number, which they cannot have because they're not here legally, or an ITIN to do business and pay taxes as an independent free contractor or a business owner in the United States. Or they can be extorted and work in the cash economy and wait for one of these a-holes to come out there and put a hole in their hands. I have been in parking lots outside of MS-13 managed neighborhoods that had lookouts, that had an entire security apparatus to keep the gang's area functioning so that law enforcement couldn't get in there. And all the people were terrified, and we would hear gunshots, and we would go rushing in to go see what was going on, and nobody was even moving, and nobody was speaking, and nobody wanted to tip us off, and nobody wanted to tell us where the bad guys are, so they would just go do it again. This is the compassionate leftist argument against illegal immigration, is that you do bring in predators, evil, scum like that. And sometimes they do this thing. This is not an acceptable option. This is CNN here reporting. People are feeling betrayed. They paid taxes in good faith and now fear it could lead to their deportation. There are so many cases to be made against having illegal aliens here. Even the left should be able to handle it, and they can't handle it. This story is written as of today. Undocumented aliens paying taxes in the United States are facing an unsettling possibility. This year, their tax dollars may be used against them. Welcome to the club. You know what? There is nothing more American right now than finding out that you're paying taxes to a government that is not serving your interests. The only difference is I have an expectation that the government will serve my interests, and you, as a legal resident of this country and a citizen of this nation, have the right to believe that, and they do not. In a recent data sharing deal between the IRS and the Homeland Security, they've sparked widespread concern for the immigrant communities. Some of the details are not obvious because they haven't been disclosed because they're law enforcement sensitive. The agreement has left many undocumented immigrants, now we're going to use the word immigrants, hesitant to pay taxes this year and uncertain about what to do next. This guy goes on to explain that sometimes when they're having these immigration hearings, they will bring stacks and stacks of tax filings, showing that they use that ITIN that I mentioned. The ITIN, they said, well, I've been paying taxes. I'm a good non-citizen who's broken the law, and I'm working here illegally, and I'm doing things that I'm not allowed to do, but I've done so in good faith that one day you will make it okay for me to do so. So I'm just pretending to be a citizen until you make me a real one. I found a picture of a stamp. I'm going to put this front and center on the screen right now. Do you guys see this? For those of you who are watching the podcast, you can see it. For those of you who are not, I will read it. This is an immigration stamp from the United Kingdom. It's been seared into my mind since maybe 2002 when I went and I lived in the UK for like 6 months. And that's about how long I was allowed to be there. The stamp says right on it, it's the stamp you get on your passport when you're a student or you're a traveler to the UK. And many of you may have seen this before. If you've ever been to London, if you've ever gone to the United Kingdom to go see something fun, not Northern Ireland, but not Ireland. If you went there, you would see this stamp from British Immigration. It says immigration officer and the date that you come in. It says the port of entry that you come in. And then it says above it, leave to enter for 6 months. Employment and recourse to public funds prohibited. You are not allowed to work in the United Kingdom as a visitor. In the same way, it is against the United States laws under Title VIII. You cannot work here under any legal authority. You are not permitted to. And if you are, quote unquote, undocumented, AKA you are here illegally, you cannot come in here and work, and you should not have access to public funds. In their case, they mean hospitals and the other things that the public government pays for, the goods that citizens expect for their tax dollars. And the Brits pay a lot in taxes too. This is very simple stuff. You cannot do this. And yet we have created workarounds for people who do not have social security numbers so that they can file taxes, so that when they get out there in front of a judge arguing why, even though they broke the law, they should be able to stay, which is absurd on its face. There's only one thing that should matter. Did you come here properly? No. Do you have a visa to stay in the United States? It was not granted. Get out. Get out. You cannot be here. The end. Or you start making exceptions under certain qualifications, and you end up with this like really mushy moral garbage. And the people who have been driving it are the crazy ladies on the left, in my opinion. It's suicidal empathy. My mother-in-law is one of those people. She's been bringing in asylum seekers and refugees and migrants to their little town, which cannot support that many people. It's only because wealthy ladies who are white are able to do it and they feel guilty. The Brits used to have this problem, by the way. They would look around the world and they would say everybody is worse off because they are not British. And so we need to take care of little yellow brother and little brown brother and little black brother. And yes, those are the pejorative and sort of diminutive terms that they would use in the UK. Because they found themselves superior. It is a way to make yourself feel better than everybody. And I used to think that it was because they just didn't know any better, but I'm just not 100% sure. I've got this little clip that I've been sitting on from Taylor Loren that kind of went viral over the weekend. She sat down with this chunky, weak, soft beta who's trying to get a date from CNN. What did my buddy call him? Like a little giggler or something? I don't know. And Taylor Loren is making the argument that Luigi Mangione, a cowardly, rich, attractive young man who gunned down a guy in cold blood. I don't care what your opinions are about insurance. Handle it without shooting a father in the back. She said that he's a morally good man. I mean, is she angling to get a conjugal visit here? Like, what's going on? It's not sensible. This sort of suicidal empathy must come from somewhere, and it's being propagated by people, I think, that sound like this.
Hilarious to see these millionaire media pundits on TV clutching their pearls about someone standing a murderer when this is the United States of America, as if we don't lionize criminals, as if we don't have, we don't stand murderers of all sorts, and we give them Netflix shows. There's a huge disconnect between the narratives and angles that sort of mainstream media pushes and what the American public feels. And you see that in moments like this. And I can tell you, I saw the biggest audience growth that I've ever seen, because people were like, oh, some journalist is actually speaking to the anger that we feel.
The women who gather outside court in New York.
So you're going to see women, especially, that feel like, oh my God, right? Like, here's this man who's revolutionary, who's famous, who's handsome, who's young, who's smart. He's a person that seems this morally good man, which is hard to find.
Yeah, I just realized women will literally date an assassin before they swipe right on me. That's where we are. I'm sure
he's a morally good man, and that is hard to find, ladies. A guy that will shoot a grown man in the back who's a father with no skin in the game at all, except he just feels good. And she'll laugh about it. Oh my. Same kind of energy I got from the folks that just went to space. I don't know if they're crazy. I don't know if they've just been fed a steady diet of their own feces for so long that they actually think it tastes good. But these people, they coexist with it. This is the reason we have these policies. I'm speculating here now. And then I've got something that I want to end with, which is actually so disturbing. It goes back to the 1950s. It's an FBI story that my buddy Aaron Stevenson found for me and shared yesterday. And it's an article that was written in 2011, so it's not new. But it explains a lot of what we're dealing with. Before we get to that, let's just play the ladies who went to space yesterday, AKA they visited the atmosphere for a few seconds and were weightless. I want you to, I'm going to play you Katy Perry, and you tell me that this is not the dumber, slightly less articulate version of Taylor Loren. And as she said, there's an entire audience of people that are willing to listen to this. The fact that that exists, it's terrifying. Like, they have the same right to vote. Like, at least we can maybe outvote them. What we can't outvote is all of them plus all the illegals that are coming here as well. But this is why I think we have them.
It is the highest high, and it is surrender to the unknown, trust, and this whole journey is not just about going to space. It's the training, it's the team, it's the whole thing. I couldn't recommend this experience more. This is like up there with all the, different tools that I've learned in my life, from meditation to the Hoffman process. This is up there because what you're doing is you're like really finding the love for yourself, because you got to trust in yourself on this journey. And then you're feeling the love when you come down, for sure. And you're feeling that strength. So I feel really connected to that strong, divine feminine right now.
By the way, you're such a badass. I love that the month of April, you're like, I'm going to space and I'm launching my tour.
Oh my God, like, you're so badass. Like, you got into a spacecraft that was built by men, that was fabricated by men, that was designed by men, and they used math. And then she got up there and she just trusted herself, AKA trusted all the people that built something that hurtled her at the speed of sound into the atmosphere, and it brought her down safely. And like, all of those things, like, that is so incredible. Like, she's just such an awesome person. She sounds like she's on mushrooms. Like, did she just have a mushroom trip? Was she like doing an ayahuasca, like, healing or something down in Mexico? Like, what just happened there? Why did we celebrate that? And as a second evidence, I'm not trying to torch you, but I am trying to torch you a little bit, because I just want you to know how serious this is. Gayle King, and this is that woman, Dr. Wynn, the bioactivist, the bioresearcher activist or something like that. There's a bunch of 5-6 women in a penis-shaped, like, 1960s comedy Austin Powers style rocket, flew around for a few minutes, and when they got to the top of the parabolical arc before they came back and re-entered and entered right back into the place that they left, they did this. And one has to grasp how stupid this is. If you're listening, this is actually worth seeing if you haven't seen it. They are floating around, and I kid you not, they have stuffed animals like every single serious scientist, space traveler has ever had. This is one of the most gnarly, weird, it explains so much about like what our culture is right now. This is like terminal narcissism too. Here they are parading in front of a camera on a capsule. Enjoy.
Got it? 1, 2, 3. Taking up space! Tamir's in space. It's okay. Leave Flynn up there. Flynn, behind you. Look at Flynn, I gotcha. I gotcha, Flynn. Gotcha. Proud of you, Flynn. Oh, the moon! You guys, I will have to tell you, look at the moon. That's amazing. Wow, look at the blue line.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goddess.
Wow.
Oh my That's our pink moon.
Okay. Now it's time to look out that way.
Oh my gosh. She's so much. Oh my gosh.
Whoa. That's amazing.
I'm not kidding when I say that, and they're all in their like tight-fitting little like space sex suits. I feel like this is the opening to a pornography where some like hunky space alien guy with like slightly discolored skin is going to dock with their floating capsule and then like have an orgy scene with all of these women in it who are basically functionally retarded. That might be the dumbest thing that we've ever seen. Billions and billions of dollars sunk in there. What did someone say the other day? Billions of dollars spent so that Jeff Bezos could get away from his fiance for 90 minutes. I guess if you got all the money in the world, you could launch this absolutely like absurdly stupid person off out there. And Americans cheered this. That woman just said, "You're such a badass." Katy Perry is probably the dumbest of all of them from what I could tell. But that person, Flynn, that you heard, you're like, Flynn? Yeah. They're proud of each other. Flynn also was passing around little stuffed animals that they were kissing and they were celebrating. There was complete ecstasy for something that they didn't do anything to achieve. Do you have any idea how much crazy work NASA astronauts go under? I actually went out there and did some training at the dive facility they do down in the Florida Keys, where they take astronauts underwater and they make them live in like a underwater environment and, you know, practice all their different skills in a relatively dangerous sort of like submersible situation. I worked out of the dive medical office where in case any of these people were going to die, they would take them up and put them into the chamber. NASA spent tons of our money on this like crazy decompression chamber facility that I learned how to run. Yeah. That's what it takes. Like it takes years to be an astronaut, or it takes like an ayahuasca trip and like these absolute just brain dead morons. Okay. This I'm going to touch on. Oh, hold on. There's the picture. There's the picture. Unadulterated, unedited. The Blue Origin penis spacecraft standing next to a scaffold. It is a shaft that got launched. It looks fake. It looks like nobody would actually seriously make that. All right, let me talk about one quick thing. This is a little narrative discussion that is actually worth knowing today. As we look out there and see the influencer market and people that are on social media and folks that are desperate to get picked, the pick-me dodgeball crowd, the fat kids that never got any love because they were lousy in the FBI, are suddenly feeling a strange new amount of respect from the new FBI director and deputy director, those guys who talked awfully hard. I heard Kash Patel say some really tough guy things about what he was going to do to the Bureau and immediately changed his tune when he got in. Same story about Dan Bongino. I want them to be successful. I'm not punching at these guys because I think it's fun. I think it's atrocious that we got this. And I went back to this article that my friend Aaron pointed out to me yesterday, and I read it. It's called Inside the Bureau's Decades-Long Effort to Court Allies in the Media, written in the fall of 2011 by the Wilson Quarterly staff. The person who actually wrote it is a guy whose name is, I want to give him credit, his name is Matthew Cecil, and he wrote this article. As the first director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, J. Edgar Hoover faced a public relations problem amid the centralization of government under FDR's New Deal. Remember, Joe Biden aspired to be a New Deal president. Some Americans worried that the law enforcement agency would develop into a secret police force, just like you and I probably do. And I think they have. To head off such fears, the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover began what became a decades-long effort to court allies in the press. And one of the most unusual aspects of this campaign, I've seen the room where they worked out of, because it's at Quantico. They have an entire like little homage to this. They created a 5-agent ghostwriting division that cultivated journalists with ostensibly personal letters from J. Edgar Hoover himself. In other words, they put 5 FBI agents starting in like the 1940s in what was known as the correspondence unit that went out there and recruited media allies by giving them personal access to J. Edgar Hoover, but it was a lie. It was written by 5 agents who ghost wrote letters and signed Hoover's name to it. This should be kind of shocking to you because we're witnessing a very similar and evolved version of that. Just like we hear about the word Mockingbird Media, they don't have Operation Mockingbird running the same way. It's much more sophisticated now. It's being run in a slightly different way. But the same principles are at work. It's just evolved. The correspondent unit, which was housed in the FBI's Criminal Records Division, turned out thousands of missives, letters, during J. Edgar Hoover's 48-year tenure at the helm of the FBI and its previous incarnation, which was called the Bureau of Investigation. The correspondence units took lead in recruiting quote-unquote journalist adjuncts to the FBI side by engaging potentially friendly reporters in wide-ranging correspondences. The letters were exchanged. Hoover would offer condolences at the loss of a family member, inquire about the correspondent's wife. They kept files on these people so they could write to them like they were personal. They would keep them close, all through the pen of a ghostwriter. He met in person with some, he almost never met these people in person, but mostly what happened is he would just send them lots of letters. And these people would feel like they had inside access. Some of the things that were written about these recruited reporters was that, thank God, a man like J. Edgar Hoover is the head of the FBI, says one ringing endorsement from the American magazine, 1955, quote, "He's the greatest bulwark against the insidious communist menace that's casting its shadow over this great land of ours," end quote. That was one of them. Another one, which was written because they convinced Morris Ernst, who was the general counsel for the ACLU, they published this in Reader's Digest in 1950. Quote, "The article's publication provided Hoover with cover from the political left that the Bureau cited for decades afterwards. This was propaganda at its finest form. Therefore, it was used as evidence that there was in fact restraint, that the FBI was not targeting civil liberties matters, and they got the right people to write it." Kind of like the folks that you see out there on X right now. Is there a correspondence unit in the same way? I doubt it. But there absolutely is a handling unit and people that are doing PR jobs. Be aware, what you're seeing is probably astroturfed and nonsense. You can ask all the questions in the world, and you should, because this is not a good thing. All right. I've got one kind of like just funny thing because we're dealing with trade war stuff in China. I found this to be funny just because I love South Park. We're going to kind of end with that. Before we end it, let me just say, if you are watching over on X, appreciate it. Make sure you guys consider watching on one of our bigger platforms, which would be something like YouTube or Rumble. You can go to rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin, where you'll get the best live chat on the internet, the nicest people with the most interesting sort of observations, things I'm reading in real time. Same thing. Our friends over on YouTube are starting to stack it up, and you guys are getting in there for the live show as well. Is youtube.com/@Kyle Seraphin. Really appreciate you over there. KyleSeraphin.com if you feel like joining us on Locals. You'll get access to all of our articles that we put out every single day. You can support the program, which we really appreciate. And the second thing is you're going to get an early view into our Sunday sit-downs on Saturday. And lastly, if you want to share the show, it's KyleSeraphinShow.com. It's just a cheat code for you to be able to share us over on Spotify, where we get good data and you can watch without any pop-up ads and things like that. So that is much appreciated. Let's do a palate cleanse because I need it. This is Trump bargaining with China. It's actually Kyle from South Park. This is actually the little Jewish kid in there bartering with a Chinaman in their own words. I just like the accent, I guess. Here we go.
Okay, for people, Canada costs a lot of money. Gonna be about $6,500.
How about $50?
$50? You find a Canada costs at least $3,000.
$55.
Hey, stop wasting my time at $55. No way I'd take my plane to Canada for less than $1,000.
Okay, $60.
$62.
Okay.
Okay, meet me, Park County Airfield, Yellow Cessna, tail number 432G.
Got
it. Never try to barter with a Chinese man.
I don't know how many dollars it costs to go to China, but I feel like it's probably closer to the 1,000. Cost a lot of money. Anyway, that's good stuff. South Park always predicts the future for some reason. Good on them. Way to go, guys. All right, we'll see you again tomorrow. I'm going to send you guys, if you're watching over on Rumble, you get over to the AMRAD podcast. I'm sure they are already midstream. It's the American Radicals podcast at AMRAD Pod over on X, or they're also, I think they're probably doing it on YouTube, but if not, we'll get them squared away there pretty soon. If it's on Rumble, it's at AMRAD Pod, so check them out there. See you guys tomorrow. God bless you. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.